You are listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg, and today I'm joined by my co-host Rahul. Let's go! Hello, this is Ace Comicals episode number 56, and tonight it is just the two of us. It is me and my co-host Rahul.
Evening, Greg.
So, less comics than usual is the first thing I've noticed when I look at the list.
Yeah, it's a bit sparse this week, isn't it?
It is, yeah, but I mean, what we are going to talk about is very good, I have to say. So, there is that. So, it's quality over quantity this time. And we are a man down, but
that's rude in Leon's absence. But yeah.
That's not how I meant it, and you know it.
Of course, missing him dearly. He doesn't seem to be. I think he had a bit of a headache, right? And he sounded rough. So I hope I hope he feels better by the time he listens to this, and it doesn't reignite his migraine.
It might. It could.
Hopefully not.
Migraines are the devil's work.
God, it's awful. Like, being on public transport and having a headache is the worst. Like, when I travelled to Italy last weekend, and like, my girlfriend said she didn't want to eat anything because it was quite an early flight. We didn't have any breakfast before we left, and I picked up something from the airport, and she didn't have anything because she's like, I don't want anything because I'll feel ill on the airplane. I was like, I've got a hearty constitution. Nothing ever affects me. I'm going to get a sausage roll, whatever. So I had a sausage thing from Pret a Manger. And then I felt really, really sick on the plane, just like holding it in for 2 hours and like rocking back and forth in my chair. And it was the worst. It's the worst. Being ill when you're traveling is the worst. So I do not blame Leon for not being here right now.
I went to Nottingham yesterday and spent 45 minutes on a coach or something like that, and had to be sick on the coach.
Oh no! What?
In
like,
the
actually
toilets.
sick?
In the coach toilets, yeah.
Oh, you were that guy. You were the guy who made the toilet unbearable.
No, I was the guy that sicked directly into the toilet, pressed the flush, and made sure that everything was fine before he left.
Imagine if it was like in Mario Kart, and like you flush the toilet and it comes out the back of the coach, and like all these cars behind you are just slipping on it.
No.
Is that not how it works? I guess is that true for aeroplanes, or am I just?
I think there's a tank.
Oh,
I think it's a. I'm not sure if that's like a fallacy or not, that aeroplanes just like drop waste.
I'm sure it is, because there's
up.
no way.
But I think they have I think it gets stored in some kind of like onboard septic tank or whatever, and then they empty that at certain points.
Yeah, I'm not stupid enough to think that it didn't work that way, but it would be hilarious if it did.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I've heard like people tell weird stories about stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure none of them are true.
So when was the last time you felt ill on the coach? Because I can't remember being an adult and feeling that bad on the coach. And I've never been on a coach where the toilet was available anyway. So like, you were lucky that you had access to it.
I know. It's not just coaches, or it's like car journeys, like any kind of like driving. I don't know, I'm weird with being a passenger in a car. Like, I always start to feel a bit churny.
No, I think that's
fairly common. I can't
yeah.
look at things. I can't look out of the window. Like, even like I can't read in the car. I can't play video games as a passenger in a car. I can't do any of that. I can only look directly ahead through the windscreen.
Can Otherwise, you listen to music?
Yeah, I can do that. But like anything else, I'll start to feel ill. If I try to look out of the side windows for too long, I start to get nauseous or queasy, and things like that. So I'm not a very good travel person at all. I should probably take travel sickness pills, but before I travel. But there you go. I'm all right on planes. It's just specifically driving that does it to me.
Take some. Like, going into Indian mum mode, but like, take some fresh ginger with you and like nibble on that while you're in the car. Seems to do the trick.
Yeah.
Settles your stomach.
I'll take that advice on board.
But enough about vomiting. Let's move on to the comics, shall we?
Yes,
what were you doing in Nottingham?
Yes. Oh, what was I doing in Nottingham? I was.
Yeah.
We just spent the day there. We checked out some Nottingham comic shops. I checked out their Forbidden Planet, which isn't as good as Leicester's Forbidden Planet. It's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shade.
It's not, man. It's not. It's just. It just feels like You go in there, and maybe it was because it was a Saturday and because it was busy. I don't know, but it just didn't feel like great place, and the comics are all sort of like shoved away in the corner, and the pop vinyls are on full view the minute you walk in, and the shelving's quite narrow. I mean, it's not too narrow, but it's narrow enough that when you walk between two shelves of pop vinyls, you feel like you are being watched,
but
by weird little plastic things.
I was going to say, at least you're a giant in that scenario.
Yeah,
I find that Forbidden Planets are a bit disappointing as comic book shops in general. Like, are there any, or did you spot any like independent places in Nottingham? While
there is an independent comic shop called Page 45 that was okay. That was pretty cool. I went in there. It's only a small place. Bought some Batman books in there, which was pretty good.
Okay. Nice.
I bought the first 3 TPBs of the current Tom King Batman run, the Rebirth DC stuff. I Am Bane, I Am Gotham, and I Am Gotham, I Am Suicide, and I Am Bane, in that order, and that's the names of the arcs.
Cool. Okay.
Within that, there's 2 issues missing, which is really irritating because those 2 issues get collected into a separate story, which I believe is called Night of the Monster Men, which collects issues of Batman and issues of Nightwing, and it's got a ripped Doctor Strange in it. So I mean, I want that one as well. I will buy that one as well eventually to sort of like complete the set. But yeah, I picked up the 3 books, and I mean, as far as comic shops go in Nottingham, I mean, they both have their strengths and weaknesses, both of them. But I mean, like, Nottingham's Forbidden Planet wasn't very good. I wasn't that enamoured with it when I went in. It wasn't great. Forbidden Planet Leicester is like 1,000 times better than Forbidden Planet Nottingham. And shout out to Forbidden Planet Leicester for being a really good comic shop, actually, because it is. Like,
yeah, I've like seen the way it's evolved over a few decades now, and like, I like that they've always kept their comics as a separate thing. Like, the downstairs has all the paraphernalia and the tat and the toys and things, but upstairs it is pretty comics focused, and the guys behind the counter do know what they're talking about.
Oh yeah, the new manager there at the moment, he's really good. He does a absolutely amazing job. He's doing an amazing job. He's getting it more sort of like on focus with what he orders in and things, because I have a lot of conversations with him, and like, he does a great job with the comics, and they always do a great job for my standing order. Like, if I want something, they can make sure I get it, and hats off to them for being able to do that. Because I mean, you know, I like my little independent comic shops. Indie comic shops are really cool, but in Leicester, I've only got a Forbidden Planet, but it's a very good Forbidden Planet, and it's the best Forbidden Planet I've ever been into. I like it better than the London one, much better.
I think I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great. Yeah, Forbidden Planet Leicester is good. It's the only comic shop in Leicester, but it is a good comic shop, and I like it. And I went into these other comic shops in Nottingham, and I missed Forbidden Planet Leicester. I was like, I've been spoiled, is what's happened. But yeah. But other than that, I mean, they both have their strengths and weaknesses, and Page 45 is a good little independent comic shop, and they have a lot of indie stuff in there as well. Like, when you walk in, actually, the stuff they've got on full view at the front of the shop is the indie stuff.
Yeah, I always appreciate that.
Yeah, so you have to go right to the back of the store to get all the mainstream, like DC, Marvel, big 2 kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The front is all Image, like all the indie kind of titles, like Boom and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it was just a day out in Nottingham, which was quite nice. Other than that, over the past couple of weeks, I've done a lot of role playing. So it's a lot more D&D. I got some new dice, and I got to try those out. I DM'd another adventure to its end. So, like, I started doing this Spectre Quashers thing before Christmas. Spectre Quashers it's basically Ghostbusters, but D&D. And I was I'm running Ghostbusters in the D&D world, and my role playing group who are the best role playing group, who always do really cool things, and they're really cool to play with, and they're always reliable, and there's never there's never any huge massive arguments, there's no drama, etc. You can rely on these guys. They're a great role playing group, and they're a good bunch of friends as well. So with those guys, I'm DMing for them, doing Ghostbusters type thing, and they've all got their own characters and whatever else, and I'm doing it like in an episodic way. So I write something that should only take one night to complete, but this one took two. And it was based on one of my favourite episodes of The Real Ghostbusters, is the way I did it. I kind of like took inspiration from that and warped it a little bit and mixed it in with my own ideas and made my own adventure out of it. It's based on an episode called The Thing in Mrs. Faversham's Attic, and my version was called Bless This House. And it was pretty cool. We DM'd it to the end, and we got a resolution without them having to actually kill the boss. They managed to talk the boss round, which was kind of cool.
Nice. I
quite like that. There's been some board gaming. A game called Takanoko that I've played, which was really cool. It's this cute game about pandas and bamboo, it's really nice to play. It's really fun. It's really easy to pick up, and I recommend that. That was cool. I
love the theme on Takanoko. I like how colourful the pieces are. I like the general style of it all. It's very nice. Very simple mechanics as well.
It is.
Good one to play with. Good one to play with like newbies to board games, I think.
Last but not least, with the D&D, back to D&D again, in another campaign we're doing, called Plain Sailing, I've created a character who is a wrestler. So this is where we've taken D&D rules and applied modern, like today's technology and everything to it, but we're still in the D&D world. So he's a like a cross-class barbarian and monk. He's like multi-class. He's got like features from both classes, and he's a wrestler. That's like his whole thing. And we got like one of our listeners actually. One of our listeners, Owen, their name is, knows our DM, and Owen has used Create a Wrestler in WWE 2K19 on the PS4 to create a version of my character, and they have sent me pictures of this, and they are going to make an intro video for him that I can use when I'm playing D&D, which will be kind of cool.
That's an amazing idea. I love that.
Yeah, so shout out to Owen for that, because that was cool. I mean, that's it. That's everything. I wanted to get it all out before we talk about more comics.
That's your 2 weeks done, right?
That's my 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, sounds like a good 2 weeks.
Yeah. There's a thing that I came across today, actually, that I wanted to just mention as well. That I think I think I might have sent this to you, but I don't know if you've looked at it, about how Spider-Man has an alternate. There's an alternate version of Spider-Man that was printed in Mexico only for so many issues, where Gwen Stacy didn't die.
Yeah, I saw that floating around Twitter today. I didn't really understand it. So if you have, I didn't really get what it was.
So
but it sounded like people were really up in arms about it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's just a really interesting thing. It's kind of like the Batmanga phenomenon. When I talked about Batmanga, where Batman had its own uniquely Japanese thing going on. This was Spider-Man was published in Mexico as it was, up to the point where Gwen Stacy died in the original comics, and then because I think the story goes, because they didn't think Spider-Man would sell in Mexico anymore with Gwen Stacy dead, they kept her alive, and instead of like publishing, like translating and publishing the US comics where Gwen Stacy is dead, they created their own storyline and carried on from that point. So the point, it diverges.
Oh, okay.
And in Mexico, Gwen Stacy was still alive, and in the US, she died.
So it was like a branch off at that one point where Mexico had its own storyline based around
for a
Gwen Stacy's
while.
death.
Yeah, it ended after a while, and they went back to publishing like translations of the US Spidey comics. But for a while, Mexico had its own thing.
That's pretty amazing. I remember the tweet that I saw it from, or originating from, was somebody whose name I forget, and I apologize now. But they were asking what run of comics that hasn't yet been collected would you like to see collected, and that was somebody's response was that run of the non-dead Gwen Stacy Mexico Spider-Man comics. That's a cool pick. I'd never have heard about it if it wasn't for that.
And then from there's been some chatter further in that thread from people doing their masters in comics and things like that want to get involved in actually creating this thing. Like, they want to put research notes in it, and they want to do like this whole thing where they want to publish those issues collected.
Oh, amazing!
So there's hopefully it isn't just idle talk, and it comes to something, and people actually do it, because that would be really awesome to have, like the same way they did with Batmanga, because that got a kind of a translate. Because I've got translations of it, but I think what I've got is just pure comics, whereas you can buy a hardback of notes and things for Batmanga, where it's got like kind of like the phenomenon, it explains the Batmanga phenomenon. It's like how Japan became obsessed with Batman via the Adam West Batman show and so forth. Which it'd be a really cool thing to have, but I've not got round to buying that yet. But yeah, that exists. And I'd like something similar for this Spider-Man thing, and I'd love to hear like the if we can still get these people to talk. I'd love to hear the original reasoning behind why they thought Gwen Stacy's death wouldn't sell in Mexico. Like that's a really odd choice to make, and it sounds very specific, like a very specific thing. I want to hear the history behind it. I want to know what like the cultural zeitgeist behind that decision was. That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, you've worded it better than me. But
because of the fact that it was so like it's notorious now historically how flippantly you can like fridge a character back in those days, and American publishers were like the American audiences were fine with it, or fine with it relative to Mexico, it seems, at least. So yeah, I want to see what the difference in mindset is, and if somebody can explain that, because
it's like this iconic Spider-Man moment, and he blames himself for it. But yeah, that was the whole like it's such an iconic moment, and for that to be just like in one part of the world, that didn't happen for a long time, and it's just like it's crazy. But yeah, so I guess we can actually start talking about comics now. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, we've already started talking about comics, but now we can get into our comics that we wanted to review. So I'm going to kick this off with the released this week, actually, the week we're recording this podcast. Last week, when you're listening to this podcast, Marvel's Annotated #1, which is a annotated version, as in it's got like notes explaining Easter eggs and such that you will find throughout the pages of the comic. There's like it's got like scripts included with it and things. It's an annotated version of a story that had been published by Marvel 25 years ago. So I'd never read this previously. I had never read the original version of Marvel's. So I'll give you the blurb from the Marvel website. Celebrating the 25th anniversary of the series that changed the way we look at superheroes, the landmark Marvels is back. In the year 1939, young photojournalist Phil Sheldon attends the sensational unveiling of the fiery android Human Torch. Little knowing, he is witnessing the dawn of the Age of Marvels. Prepare to relive Marvel's golden age from a whole new point of view as Phil covers the superhuman sightings of the 1930s and 40s. So this collects issues, this collects issues 0 and 1 of the original Marvel's story in the first Marvel's Annotated book, and it's Marvel Golden Age, and it's characters that would have been published back when Marvel was still Timely Comics, and it's got like Captain America, Namor, the Human Torch, the original Human Torch, not Johnny Storm. etc. And from the terror caused by the Human Torch's epic clash with the Submariner to the patriotism stirred by the debut of Captain America and more. Packed with extras and completely remastered, you won't want to miss the unique look back at Marvel's phenomenon, collecting Marvel's 0 and 1. So that is Marvel's issue 1. This is the one we're looking at today. And I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this kind of like looking at it in a from the outside in a kind of, I don't know, can I say meta, in a meta way?
Yeah, absolutely. Since it's
like
a retrospective piece,
like it's a history lesson basically of Marvel, of the history of superheroes at Marvel. And it will take you through that step by step, but it's told as a story through the eyes of a photographer, a news photographer, almost, well, fairly similar to the way that Ed Piskor has done with X-Men Grand Designs, yes, where he's telling the story of the X-Men through the eyes of the Watcher. And it's kind of similar to that, but not, because we're not really exclusive. We're getting the life of this photojournalist guy as well. This news photographer interspersed with it, so it's kind of like his story, and he is, and through his eyes we are seeing the rise of superheroes and whatever else, and it's kind of all told from his perspective, and about how we're seeing these amazing beings attacking, destroying, fighting each other and whatever, laying waste to parts of the city through that, and how he copes with that, as well as how he documents, superheroes and where it all started and how it all began and everything else. And yeah, it's with the original scripts and annotations and explanations of the Easter eggs and such. This is probably the best way to read it, I think, because the original version, for someone just diving straight in, might not work as well, because you might need the backup notes if you don't know too much about Marvel history, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, so let me dive in here.
Yeah, you start before I tie myself in a knot.
Well, no, because the thing is, I am that person who had never heard of this comic, and basically dived in without checking the annotated notes at the back first. So the question I wanted to ask of you is, the first, 2/3 of this pretty hefty, oversized book is that the comic as it was originally printed back, 25 years ago?
Yes.
The collection of issue 0 and issue 1.
That is issue 0 and issue 1 as they would have originally been, yes.
Okay, because I actually didn't get time to finish the entire book, but then because I knew I wasn't going to have enough time to read the whole thing, I skipped to the annotations. And yeah, it's really cool how they give, not just sometimes when you get an annotated thing, or you watch a director's commentary of a DVD, and you kind of get fluff. People are telling stories that happened on set, or things that happened anecdotally around the creation of this thing. But there's so much detail in, what's being referenced and the history behind it and the context and who the players were during the creation of this book. I'm really taken with how much love has gone into the annotation of it. It's not just a cash grab. It's not just a simple, let's get some people in the room who were kind of there at the time. They've really gone into detail about, the influences and references and stuff. And I really like that. And to go back to what you were saying about how it feels very similar to Ed Piskor's X-Men Grand Designs, I felt the same way, but, I think what you're trying to get at is they have different goals, because X-Men Grand Designs is trying to codify or collate, what is it, 50, almost, is it 30, 50? What did we talk about last week? We said, how many years of Marvel have there been so far? It's 80, right?
80, yes.
Yeah, so it's trying to collect 80 years of X-Men history into one unified, current, up-to-date, cohesive storyline. And obviously this isn't really trying to do the same thing, because it's not trying to...
Don't know if X-Men's 80.
Okay, I mean, I'm the pleb who doesn't know the history of Marvel, but like, however, because basically Ed Piskor is trying to make this unified history and make it into one cohesive story, for current day standards, so everything lines up neatly in order. I don't think Marvels is quite going for the same thing, but because I think it was written so long ago, but it does have the same endpoint in some ways, because it does unify the idea of the origins of these heroes in the, like, what year is this set in?
It starts in 1939.
Yeah, because it has an early like 20s, 30s, 40s vibe to it. So 1939. Okay,
I think it's 39. I think it's 39 onwards.
Okay, and the fact that because like how Grand Designs has the old art style, this feels like it's the art style of this book is as though not from the 30s, but like everybody dresses like they're from the 30s, and it has the setting is in the 30s. It's not trying to modernize the stories from back then, and I really like that. I like that it's set in this same history, and it's trying to bring out the timeline to match with it. And yeah, I just think it's really cool. So yeah, do you want to dive into your piece?
Yeah, sorry. I was just sorry. I was trying to work out how old X-Men was, because you raised a question there when you said, I think X-Men first issue of X-Men, Uncanny X-Men #1 was 1963.
Okay.
So I think X-Men is 56 years old, is it?
Oh wow, okay.
Because 63, 73, 83. Is it 56? My math isn't that good.
God, don't ask me. I'm an engineer. I learned how to use calculators, not mental maths. But the point being is that, like, without repeating myself too much, Grand Design's unifying everything into this one piece, which has the stylistic aesthetic of a particular time. Yeah. Whereas this is taking the stories and setting it in a particular time. Yeah. And even though they're kind of different things, it kind of you get the same vibe from it. And the thing that I really liked about Marvels is that you do get a different context for the Namor stuff, which was fairly new to me, learning about it in X-Men Grand Designs. Because the flooding of New York, and then seeing it from this point of view, I feel like they're really good bedfellows, these two comics. So I would recommend reading Marvels and Grand Designs back to back. Yes, indeed.
And this is like kind of like through the eyes. This is going to follow the career of this news photographer, and it's going to run up to from 1939 to 1974. Oh, is how far Marvel goes. So that's the sort of like that chunk of Marvel history it will cover. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being able to see it through this human set of eyes, and to be, the way that the public might have reacted. Like, to see the way the public might have reacted to seeing these things, these superheroes for the first time, the way they might react to, the fear that you might get when you've got two kind of like epically powerful beings clashing above the city and causing unknown havoc and God knows what else, and I just really enjoyed it as a kind of like a history lesson, and learning about it, going through and getting all the Human Torch stuff at the beginning with the original Human Torch and everything else, and how all that worked, and like in this 1930s framing and this 1940s framing, like with the the Second World War on and everything else, and it all feels quite nice and quite in place and quite accurate to what it's trying to be. And yeah, as you were saying with Grand Designs, these two work quite well side by side as like a Marvel history lesson. And it's I just enjoy the newsman as a framing device. I think that's a good way to do it. Like, almost like when we read the comic, we're looking through scrapbooks of his reports. with him, kind of thing, and he's just like reliving it all and giving it to us, kind of thing. Like, oh, this is when I covered this, and this is when this happened in the city, and I was there with my camera, kind of thing. That kind of stuff. Which I quite
it's
like.
almost like his memoirs.
Yeah,
with with the snapshots of what's actually happening laid behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I wanted to mention the artwork in this because I really, really like it. I like Alex Ross's artwork, and I know Alex Ross from DC's Kingdom Come as well. So he worked on a DC story called Kingdom Come, and he's got like this really cool kind of like he paints. It's this really, really cool, really beautiful paintings. And the reason I think that works particularly well for these first 2 issues is because it looks like pulpy magazine covers. So, old pulp magazines that would have been published in the 30s and 40s and things. Like Tales of Adventure type thing. I don't know if that's an actual title of a pulp magazine, but, like you'd have like some painting of some dude like standing on the wings of a biplane with a pistol held to the pilot's head or something like that, and it'd all be like great action and these pulp stories. But yeah, it's got that kind of feel about it. And I really like that. That works for me in a unique way. And everything looks really grand as well, the way he paints it.
And it does have that foggy New York sort of like grimy gumshoe detective sort of aesthetic to it.
Oh, yeah, brilliant, yeah. And Kurt Busiek's writing as well. Like, the combination of the two is great. I'll just give you the credits while we're talking about the people that worked on this. So, for Marvel's Annotated, Marvel Zero is Alex Ross and Steve Darnell, with Alex Ross as artist and colorist. Richard Starkings and Comicraft were the letterers, and Marcus McLaurin was the editor. Marvel's number 1 was Kurt Busiek, with writer, with Alex Ross as artist and colorist. Richard Starkings and John Gushell, letterers, Spencer Lamb, assistant editor, and Marcus McLaurin, editor. Originally published January 1994, Marvel's number 1. Marvel Zero was published in August 94, so Marvel Zero came after the Marvel's 1.
Okay.
But yeah, all of it's fantastic, and it all comes together very well, and it has this old photo aesthetic about it as well. Like, especially when it goes black and white. There are parts of the book that go black and white when they're watching a film broadcast, or when they... I wouldn't say broadcast, actually. Actually, yes, broadcast, because there was a thing with Namor on television. Yeah, broadcast. Television existed then, right? I'm not going nuts.
I'm not sure, but there is definitely a scene where they're screening news in a movie theater. Yeah,
screening news in a movie theater. I remember that. And I think there was a thing where Namor is on television as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I quite enjoyed when it goes black and white, because with it being inside a border as well, with the gutters around it being in a panel in a comic book, it looks like a photograph, and it's great. And it's just a really good way to read this. Like, even if you've never read Marvels before, this is probably going to be the best way to read it because of the way it explains it. I'm not going to go into the Easter eggs and everything else. I'm trying not to tell you too much, because there's lots of little hidden things in there to find. Certain characters crop up and things like that, and it's just really nice to see them at their beginnings. I think I've already mentioned, so I can just mention it. J. Jonah Jameson's in there as a young scrappy reporter kid. Before he has dreams about taking over the Bugle, though. Damn it, he's going to do it.
And he's still a bit of a knob even back then.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
With his, like, shifty, patronising eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's that kind of stuff, and it's great for that, and I really enjoyed it, and I will be getting the rest of it, because I don't have Marvels. I never read it originally. I've never bought a collected edition of it, and I feel like this is going to be the best way to own it now, with all the annotations and the original scripts in the back and everything else. So yeah, bring it on. It's a very nicely published thing, this. It's a very nice comic to have. It's very like it's quite thick. It's got like this nice thick stock cardboard cover. It's just really cool.
Yeah, I made the mistake because I bought it digitally, and I didn't realize how long it was when I started reading it. So I was like, let me read it a couple of hours before we start recording, and then didn't have enough time to finish it off. But so my point of view for this was, again, I didn't even know it existed. I gather there's going to be 4 in total. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I think I'm on board with reading all of these for the same reasons that I'm on board with reading Grand Designs, because I want to know all this context, and I'm quite taken with the story that it's telling about this photojournalist. But I have to admit, when I first skimmed through it, I'm not particularly taken with this art style, like in my gut. I think once I started getting into it, I really started enjoying its sense of place and like how expressive it is in selling the time, like not just the time aesthetically, because it sells this I don't know, like syrupy, filmic, like really, what's the word? Like heavily heightened sense of the 1940s, you know, before America joined the war, effectively. And it's really good at selling that, but also, I don't know, everything about it, tonally, the you know, the language that everybody uses, the clothing everybody wears, it all feels really authentic. And the more I read, the more I got into that, and I started seeing it as more of like a period piece movie in some ways. But I have to say, I don't think I would have given it as much time if it didn't have this amazing introduction, which I realized afterwards is actually Marvel's issue number 0. So the stuff that didn't work for me, if they had given it as Marvel's number 1 on its own, I don't think I would have like fallen into it. But Marvel 0 is a really good prologue to this story, because it is effectively telling you a very quick origin for this first Human Torch in the context of like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And there's just something really distressingly upsetting about how it sells his birth and creation, and, you know, hiding him away from humanity, and then second birth, as it were, really, really deftly, really effectively in just like 10 pages or so. And like the way that it's colored, the way that it's framed, the way that there's something really like grandiose and contemplative about the way that the lettering is placed over the art and how it's all arranged, that left me feeling really uncomfortable and really upset. And it's so good. Like I'm really glad that they put Marvel's issue number 0 in front of issue number 1 in part of the same collection. I think it's a really good merging.
Had it as it's supposed to be, instead of chronologically, where one was straight out, one came after the other.
100%. Like it was such a shame that it came out afterwards, because I think it is. I think towards the end, because I was trying to read some of the annotation stuff, there is an excerpt by, I think, the writer. Let me see if I can find it. Kurt Busiek, the writer, and he says, oh, look, another one of those 0 issues, one of those things comic publishers put out to suck more money out of your pockets. What's in this one? A secret origin, a key story that won't be told in the regular series, a set of trading cards you've got to have to understand anything. Not this time. And like I know he's being like self-deprecating, but that's exactly what it is. Like I feel like it's a really important piece of the puzzle.
It is
to this issue, to this book, and I'm really glad they put it in that order.
I love the way they've handled it, because the way they've handled the Human Torch in those pages and how they've condensed down, like, because I mean, the original Human Torch was like he first appeared in Marvel Comics number 1, which was published by Timely Comics in October 1939. So Marvel Comics was a thing that Timely Comics used to publish.
Oh, okay.
And he was originally like some kind of like monster, like science fiction monster type thing, like that kind of. He was originally that kind of character, and then later became a superhero, which is kind of the way this book goes. Like people are scared of him, and then he learns respect for life and everything else, and becomes a hero. It's kind of how Namor starts out as well. Namor, though, goes off the rails a little bit a couple of times, but you know.
I mean, as hinted at by the Frankenstein reference right at the very start.
Yeah, definitely. And he is he's Jim Hammond, by the way. This is the Human Torch, Jim Hammond. He was created in a lab. He's an android, Frankenstein, and he was revived back in 1961 by Stanley and Jack Kirby, and that's when they made Johnny Storm for the Fantastic Four. So Johnny Storm wasn't the only Human Torch. A lot of you probably already know that, but yeah.
I didn't. So yeah, I'm glad to have this history lesson.
Yeah. So yes, that is Marvel's number one, and Marvel's Annotated number one, I should say. And you can pick that up now because it will still be on shelves. It costs a bit more than an ordinary comic, but it's worth it because it's a nice thing to have.
It's nice, and there's a lot of content in it.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't gone over what the content is. Like, it has it has issue number 0, it has issue number 1, and then immediately after it has the annotations where it goes through page by page, giving explanations of the references and maybe techniques behind some of the art styles, etc. And then after that, I was surprised by this. I thought that would be it. There's all the different cover art for the 2 issues in question. And then there's more art. There's more like head sketches and inside front cover sketches. There's images of like acetate overlaid cover versions. There's opening titles. There's covers of the 1993 editions of the Marvel Age issue number 130 onwards that this was initially printed in. And then it goes on to have interviews with introductions, and then also interviews with like various part of the creative team. It's a really giving book. Oh, and then on top of that, it has the script. Yeah,
which is really nice. It's really cool. I like it.
And, then an introduction by Stan Lee as well at the very end.
Yeah, and while I'm reading it, I can fully hear jazz and swing. Like that. I can just hear that as I'm reading it. Like I'm sitting in this dude's office, and he's like telling me the story or whatever through cigarette smoke. But yeah, it's a great thing. Marvel's Annotated number 1. I would say go and pick that up if you haven't already got Marvels as a collected edition. Go and pick that up. I mean, even if you have and you want the extras, it's nice. But I mean, I would say if you've not already read Marvels, just read it like this, because you'll probably enjoy it more, I think, with all the extra bits on the end. And moving on from there, Ray, you read something that I didn't read.
Yeah, I read something called the Avant Guards. I'm not going to speak too much about this because it's very similar in some ways to stuff I've mentioned in the past. So it's a boombox comic, and like I think if you read boombox comics, stuff like like Giant Days, or I'm trying to think of what else, like Lumberjanes, Fences.
That one that you said about Dodgeball, was that boombox?
Yeah, that's what I was going to get onto. I think that's a boombox one. So Dodge City. So that's the first of the 2 like sports manga comics that I've been reading. This is the second. It's not so much manga-y. It's more just it's basically a boombox comic set around basketball, women's basketball in a women's art school. So let me read the blurb from the actual comic. Give me 1 second to find that. So the title that caught my attention was called Art School Alley-Oop, The Avant Guards, by Carly Austin, Noah Hayes, Rebecca Nolte, and Ed Dukeshire. It says, welcome to the Georgia O'Keeffe School of Arts and Subtle Dramatics, a historically all-female school whose population is decidedly more drama geek than jock. Liv, aspiring actor and basketball enthusiast, doesn't understand why she can't be both, but she seems alone in that belief. Until Charlie, a recent transfer, a star basketball player, and the answer to all of Liv's problems. She'll stop at nothing to get Charlie to join the ragtag group of misfits that make up their fledgling basketball team. And what I like about this, in contrast to Dodge City, like Dodge City was very vibrant, it had a really fun, diverse cast, it was all very colourful and kinetic and everything. Avant Guards is a lot more slower paced. I feel like it's taking a step back. Like it doesn't show you the entire cast that's on the front cover of this book immediately. It basically focuses on two of the characters, Liv and Charlie, and their initial introduction, and like Charlie's hesitance to getting involved with anything at this university that she's been transferred to, and how Liv sort of through her enthusiasm and just her personality and sheer persistence gets Charlie involved in not just the basketball aspect but just socializing at university in general. And it's a really sweet story, and I think I'm going to keep up to this. It's a very nice, light, colourful read, and if you like that kind of stuff, like I've already mentioned, Lumberjanes or Dodge City, or even the other one that I loved before, which is a Boombox comic, which was Met Cadet U, that same style, vibrancy, and like lightness of tone, then I would recommend this. So that's the Avant Guards.
I feel like the cosmos is trying to spoon feed me basketball because you're talking about basketball comics that I kind of want to read. Last night, Sophie put Coach Carter on, and I watched that.
Oh, nice.
And Hassan Minhaj makes basketball references all the time in his Netflix show, and I have to Google things to find out what he means or who he's talking about.
Not to mention that me and Leon have, this is the first regular season of basketball that we've ever watched from start to finish so far.
Yeah,
and we've been talking to you about that in the background as well. I mean, that's part of the reason I wanted to read this, is because my recent foray into watching basketball a lot more regularly than I ever have before is influenced this.
Basketballception, man.
Basketball's great. It's a really fun sport to watch because there's so much it's a really entertaining watch. Nobody shoot me for this, but I think football's quite boring. For 90 minutes, there's not much happens. Basketball, there is stuff constantly happening, and I love how much back and forth there is. I like the celebrity of it all. I like the personal drama a lot more than I ever have with, say, football or rugby. I'm just super taken with it. I love the fashion behind basketball. I love checking out people's trainers and things. Cool.
I keep telling myself I'm going to watch hockey, but I never ever get around to doing it.
You should. I got a guy at work who is well into hockey, watching both the American stuff and also the UK leagues. So if you want me to ask him how you can get into that, I'll give him a shout. Yeah,
if you can get me some pointers on where to start, that'd be great. But I've always had a kind of an interest in the idea of ice hockey. So I do want to start watching it. When I found out Nottingham had an ice hockey team yesterday.
Yeah. There's a couple of leagues in the UK. I'm sure there's at least one big league in the UK, and they you can get season tickets for UK ice hockey for quite cheap here because it's not so huge. How hard would it be for you to go to Nottingham every weekend and check them out? You can become a fan.
Yeah. Speaking of ice hockey, there's a man who spent most of his career in hockey shirts, and that's Kevin Smith.
And that smooth segue. I like it.
He has written a new comic. He has. So I've talked before about this revival of Hit Girl and Kick-Ass that's going on through Image Comics. It's back, and they're publishing new stories with new characters. Well, the Kick-Ass is a new Kick-Ass. It's not the Kick-Ass you're used to, and it's great. And it's been really good so far. And Hit Girl is a continuing thing as well. And what they're doing with Hit Girl is they're doing self-contained arcs where she visits different parts of the world and dispenses justice the Hit Girl way. And in this one now it's Hit Girl in Hollywood. So the official title is Hit Girl Season 2 Number 1. But it's basically Hit Girl in Hollywood number 1. And it's her next stop on her world tour of blood, guts and justice. And this one's written by Kevin Smith. And now, I've read Kevin Smith's previous comic stuff. I liked Cacophony, and I liked Guardian Devil. Cacophony was one of his Batman stories. He also did The Widening Gaia. And Guardian Devil was his Daredevil. And... yeah, needless to say, I'm a bit of a fan of Kevin Smith's other work as well. I like his films Mallrats and Clerks. I like the sense of humor he has in those films. They were things that as a teenager I kind of latched onto. So I really love those films. And I found out he was doing the Hit Girl comic that I'm reading. I got quite excited, and yeah, it is awesome. Not to mention that the version I picked up as well has a Francesco Francavilla cover. So, and I love that man's artwork, as anyone who's listened to this show probably knows. And I love how, yeah, it's just a great comic. So this one is completely silent up to the last page. There's no dialogue up to the final page, which is kind of cool. I quite like when stories can run and you can understand exactly what's going on the strength of images alone. It kind of speaks for the power of the medium of comics, if you get where I'm coming from, Ray.
100%. Like you're preaching to the choir here. I love comics that can communicate through like the movement of the panels, like between panels, and tell a story without needing to fall back on words.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. You've sold me on this book already. Yeah.
So, I mean, the story begins with Hit Girl foiling a school shooting in a library and killing both of the shooters before there are too many casualties or too much damage is done. And in the maelstrom, she finds a book about herself, a bestseller. And learning that her life is going to be adapted into a movie, she sets her sights on Hollywood because obviously she's not into that. Now, that's the premise for issue 1, and that's going to set up the next few issues that this story will continue through. The art style is quite bouncy and cute and cartoony, and it has like this Disney Sat AM optimism about it, which is like a direct contrast to the level of violence, and I like that. I think it works very well, and it's an incredibly inspired choice for this book because it's like this really kind of like unassuming, not dangerous looking in the slightest, you know, and then all of a sudden heads are getting lopped and people are bleeding everywhere, but they still look really unassuming and not dangerous in the slightest, and it's great. It's a really good aesthetic for this book. It works well for the idea of Hit Girl, I think, because she's like the whole thing is like she's like this teenage girl in this like purple ensemble, like looks like she's playing at being a superhero, but actually she's like a potty mouth and super well trained. I'm going to be following this one as I have the others, and there's Kevin Smith's sense of humour running through it as well, which, being a fan of Clerks and Mallrats, I kind of like. The comic is fairly cinematic in pace and flow, so it feels like a fleshed out storyboard, more so than most comics do. In the way that it doesn't do what we've talked about in previous conversations on this show. You know, when I've mentioned that comics can show concurrent events in ways that films can't, and I've talked about comics that do this very well. I think the most recent one that I mentioned that does something really cool with that is Shredder in Hell. Well, this isn't doing that so much, but it's still great. Because of the flow and the art style, you can imagine it as an animated piece, which works really well for me. And I think that's why I don't mind the way it runs. And I would recommend this to you, Ray. I think you should pick this up. I know that sort of historically Kick-Ass and Hit Girl aren't your thing, Ray, but I kind of think you should read this. And have I sold this to you?
Yeah, I think so. Because, like, okay, so I'll list off the reasons why. Because the biggest of all of them is that you said how this entire issue is almost silent up until the end. That is already piquing my interest because I love comics that do that, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Kevin Smith, I think I didn't grow up with him as a teenager the way that you did, but I have like I've watched a lot of his films in retrospect, and like stuff like Clerks and Clerks 2, I really enjoyed as like those stupid stoner flick kind of things. I don't really like his other ones as much, I think, but Mallrats is really cool. Yeah, definitely Clerks 2. There's something about that film that just really resonated with me at the time that it came out. But yeah, I do like his sense of humor. I like his personality generally, especially the way he talks about things these days, and like how much of a family man he is, and things like that. Despite his appearances on The Big Bang Theory, but I won't hold that against him. Yeah, I'm keen to see what his writing is like, because I don't think I've ever read a comic by him.
Yeah,
or a comic with his writing. So yeah, I'd give it a go.
Well,
did you say it was an issue number 1, right?
It's an issue number 1. Yeah, because these Hit Girl things are all self-contained. So they have like 4 issues of Hit Girl in Colombia, 4 issues of Hit Girl in Rome, whatever, like different parts of the world each time. So you can just dive in. You don't have to know anything.
Okay, yeah, I'll give it a go.
Yeah,
sure.
I can give you some good places to start for Kevin Smith comics, like the 2 I mentioned at the start of this: Guardian Devil, which is his Daredevil run, and Batman Cacophony, which is really good.
Okay, yeah, I'll give them a look.
Yeah, give those 2 a go. And yeah, I thought this comic was great anyway, because I'm loving this Hit Girl series, and I'm loving where it's going, and I like this whole idea that they're doing like the thing where someone, like a new creative team, picks it up each time, and like when one finishes, another one jumps in, and I quite like that. It's like that whole thing where someone writes a story and then passes it on to somebody else and gets them to write the next paragraph.
Yeah, like Mad Libs.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. So the list of credits here, we've got writer Kevin Smith, artist Pernille Orum. I'm sorry about that if I've said your name wrong. I apologise. Sonny Go is a colorist, Clem Robbins letters, and cover artists Francesco Francavilla, Amanda Connor with Paul Mounts. So you've got Francesco Francavilla did the main cover, and I think Amanda Connor and Paul Mounts did an alt cover for it. But yeah, it's something to behold, and the cover's really nice because it does this thing where it has like the Hit Girl logo, and then it says "in" underneath, and then because she's standing on the Hollywood Hill with the Hollywood logo in the background, like the sign, it kind of all blends, so the logo kind of blends into the image. And she's like kind of like marching down the hill looking a little bit angry, like flecks of blood everywhere, posters which say "Heretofore Hit Girl, coming soon," and which is the name of the book, Heretofore Hit Girl, and that's what's being adapted into a movie. It's just great. I really enjoyed this issue. Yeah, so that's Hit Girl Season 2 number 1, or Hit Girl in Hollywood number 1, I think is the better title. But yeah, there we go. One more to talk about, and that is the last one that I read, which is another book about our favourite bronze sword swinging Adonis. Conan the Barbarian. And this one's called Savage Sword of Conan, and this is like the second of 3 Conan books that we're going to see with the revival of Conan at Marvel Comics. So we've got the first one already, which I talked about, which is Conan the Barbarian. This one is the Savage Sword of Conan, and there's going to be a third one, which is Age of Conan, which is coming 13th of March, and that is something to look forward to for sure. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute at the end of this, when I finish talking about Savage Sword of Conan. So this is either number 1 or number 236, depending on your history with Conan the Barbarian. So it's number 1 for Savage Sword of Conan, as it's like, this is like the comic series is back up again. So it's number 1, you can jump in and you can start reading here. Or if you've read Savage Sword of Conan previously, it's number 236. And much like the other Conan book I talked about, it's to do with the relaunch of Conan Barbarian. This is the second one to return to the shelves. And straight in on the artwork, because to tie this back to Marvel's, it's got a nicely painted Alex Ross cover, which I really like, and works really well for what it's trying to be, for the fact that it's these sword and sorcery stories, and like this sword and sorcery artwork that I've talked about previously when I've talked about Conan the Barbarian, how it works. And yeah, it's just a great cover of Conan swinging an axe, smashing up some skeletons. Yeah, it works for me. I like it, being all savage and stuff. Now this issue really was savage. And I'll come to that again in a moment. It's a nicely painted Alex Ross cover. The book also contains the first part of a new Conan prose story that will be serialised in coming issues, much the same as the other Conan book I've talked about. This has got another short prose story that's going to be serialised in the back. We get the first 3 pages of it, which is kind of cool. I quite like that. The art is heavy with a lot of dark lines and a lot of highly contrasting light and shadow. The interiors, it feels very heavy and violent and visceral, which works really well for the book and really well for the content. So this opens with Conan shipwrecked, lost at sea, and he gets picked up by some slavers, and he's thrown in the brig half dead, and there's a dude down there who helps him, keeps him alive. The guy strikes a deal. The guy down in the brig is another guy who's been captured to be sold as a slave, and he strikes a deal with the captain and the crew that they will let him join the pirate crew if he is able to keep Conan alive to be sold when they get to shore. So he was able to heal Conan and keep him going, and that's where it all kicks off, because when Conan wakes up, he ain't happy. That's the easiest way to put it. He ain't happy. So yeah, it feels heavy and violent and visceral, like the content of the story, and it draws you into this savage world of pirates and barbarians. Barbarians who can free themselves, free the chains they're in from the deck of a boat using a splintered finger bone that they splintered. Yeah. It's that kind of book. It's beautifully coloured and altogether has this painted impressionistic quality that lends itself well to the communication of action and violence, because it just feels so heavy and visceral with these dark lines, and how how many dark lines there are, and how impressionistic it all is in the way it's put on the page. It just works so well for what it's doing. And the play of light and shadow as well, with the way light filters through from different sources below the deck of the boat, and the way the light will filter through slats of wood and different light sources in different parts of the comic, like lanterns and fire and things like that. And it just comes together really nicely, and it's like you're sat round a campfire, and these are the images that are playing in your head while someone is telling you the story of this, something more than a man, like a superhero. And I guess in medieval times, these are the kind of people that were revered. These kind of stories that got told, these people that were larger than life, maybe not with powers, but with cunning, or with strength, or with something else. People would weave tales about people swinging axes on battlefields and taking down 100 people when they probably only killed 2. Things like that, it's that kind of extrapolation and whatever else. And this is kind of like how it feels reading this book, that you're sat around a campfire being told one of these tall tales about this beast of a man who was captured by slavers and freed himself and everything else. And it's great. And there's some really great moments in here. There's some really cool layouts used. There's a really nice double page spread where it's like a 9-panel grid layout on both pages. And then the end finishes with the 3 panels merged when Conan wakes up. But this is the point where he's being nursed back to health on the boat. And he's recovering from sickness and fever after being shipwrecked and left in the ocean. And I love how it's laid out in alternating panels. So it goes in brief snippets of Conan being tended to below deck, and then a pure black panel with text on it, with narration on it. And the images and the words work together to weave and immerse you in a feeling of dipping in and out of consciousness, which is really cool because you get like a snippet of Conan with like a wet rag on his head, then it'll go black again. Then you get another snippet of him being fed some water, and then it'll go black again. And it's just like he's dipping in and out of consciousness is what you're being told, but you're also experiencing that with the panels alternating between image black, image black, image black, which I quite liked. I thought that was a rather cool way to communicate that. And the book is a cool revival of a series and serves as a great accompaniment to the other Conan book, which was Conan the Barbarian. And there is a third Conan book on the way, as I mentioned at the start of this, which will be on shelves on March the 13th. And that is going to be Age of Conan, which I will read you a little blurb about now. So, Age of Conan, Belit, Queen of the Black Coast, which there's going to be 5 of these. So, the she-devil of the sea, who would be Queen Belit. The name alone conjures fear up and down the coast of the Hyborian Age, and the sight of her ship, the Tigress, is an omen of despair for any town in the Pirate Queen's path. The Age of Conan kicks off with one of Conan's most formidable and memorable female compatriots, in an all-new story revealing how she became the undisputed Queen of the Black Coast. The teenage Belit, obsessed with the sea, as well as the monsters and treasures she thinks are summoning her there, stows away on the ship of the dread Admiral Athrasis into a deadly adventure even she could not predict, plus the final chapter in an all-new Belit prose novella presented here for the first time. Oh, first chapter, not final chapter, sorry. Why would it be the final chapter? It's been presented there for the first time. But yeah, there we go. So, more Conan to look forward to, and more sword and sorcery to look forward to. I really do like me a bit of sword and sorcery, and there's no point in me telling you to read this, Ray, because I don't think you have the same kind of. You're not as enamoured with this kind of like aesthetic as I am, are you?
No, I guess not. And it's always nice to hear how passionate you are about it, because it's something that just never really leaps off the page for me.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing of, I don't know, Western D&D fantasy archetypes. Maybe it's not even the archetypes. I think it is literally just the art style, that aesthetic of like, you know, rippling oiled muscles and giant broadswords and stuff. Like, I don't know, it doesn't really tick any boxes for me. But like, so what is it about Conan in general that goes beyond just the aesthetic and just beyond the like, you know, the warrior, like the, you know, the peak performance warrior who can, you know, kill anything through sheer force of will? Are there stories embedded in that beyond just the muscly dude thing?
Yeah, it goes beyond tales of his prowess, because I mean a lot of it is just it's all framed in tales of Conan's prowess, because the way they tell Conan stories, from my experience anyway, I can't say that I've read masses and masses of Conan. I mean, I've read the comics, obviously, like some of the comics, but that's it. And I've read I've read a couple of prose tales, but I'm not, you know, the way they kind of go. It's like if you know, like when you I don't know how to describe this, when you read myths or legends, and you hear tales of great warriors outsmarting gods and things like that. It's tales of his prowess in that way, in the fact that this man was as strong as 10 oxes, and he was able to do this, and he freed 1,000 villagers from a crumbled tunnel or something, that kind of thing. But it's also, and you can imagine that back in the time in I know none of this is ever going to be, it's not actual history or anything like that, but back in medieval times, maybe there were similar stories knocking about that would have been passed down by word of mouth, that people would have told around campfires about gods and witches and so forth.
And like embellished with every single passing on of the story. Yeah,
which is what I was trying to get across earlier when I was saying, you know, he probably only killed 2 people on the battlefield, but when you sit at the campfire and listen to it as a 10-year-old kid, someone's telling you that this guy took 100 people down single-handedly, that kind of thing. And I've always been interested in that, in the why we need these types of stories. Like, why do people enjoy hearing it, and what is it that, you know, people get out of it? And also, it's the same reason I like superhero stories, I guess, because these are basically like modern day myths and legends. So when we read stories about Captain America or Batman or Superman or Ms. Marvel, we're kind of, these are what, in 1,000 years' time, the way I look at it is, in 1,000 years' time, these are what people are going to be putting into collected books the same way we read Greek myths, right?
Okay.
I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I like the idea of renormalizing my expectation of what the story will be just based on the cover of this book, and like reminding me that what kind of catharsis is this story supposed to give. Like, again, if you were if you were in the medieval days and you heard this story of prowess and this guy who can save you from your dismal life, or can save you from these hardships, or the evils and horrors of the world. Yeah, it's a good reminder that there are a reason behind a lot of these stories, and I think that's what I wanted to hear, to be honest. Like, it isn't just schlocky, pulpy action adventure, which sometimes I have time for, but maybe...
I do like schlocky, pulpy action adventure, Ray.
I do fan. As no, don't get me wrong, I do as well, but not with this particular art style. Yeah. But it's nice to be reminded that there is more to the story than just schlocky and pulpy action. Yeah. Which is, I mean, I think the cover betrays that slightly, because all I see is like shitty Master System game cover. You know what I mean? Like...
Oh, hey, let's not do that. All right, let's not go there, because some of those games are amazing. All right,
I was leading you into go on.
That is not a shitty Master System game cover. That is an Alex Ross comic cover, and it's beautiful. No, but you're going to get me talking about Golden Axe now.
That's what I was trying to do. Yeah,
because I used to love the Golden Axe games on the Mega Drive. Like, I loved the idea of like this lone hero. The whole lone hero saving the world thing is a thing that I've always enjoyed, which is why I enjoy video games and stuff. Like, one person going out of their way when nobody else is standing up, to stand up, take a stand, and take on everything by themselves. So with Golden Axe, there's 3 people, but you only get to play as one when you play it single player. So for all intents and purposes, you're one guy versus the horde. And then like even into science fiction stuff, like there was a game I had called Truxton. There's an Ace Pilot, and this Ace Pilot, it's a bullet hell game, but it was a game on the Mega Drive, and the story behind it was this Ace Pilot is the only person capable of halting the alien invasion or the alien attack on Earth, and because he's an Ace Pilot, they can send him out by himself and he can deal with this on his own. And it's like, this guy is good enough to go against an entire planet of aliens, that kind of thing. The whole idea of that, it inspires you and it gives you hope, in a way.
Yeah, like through sheer force of will and...
Yeah, anything is possible, right? Yeah,
you kind of sold me on it.
If you were, that's kind of what sells me on it. And I like the... I've always liked the idea of the berserker anyway, like the archetype of the berserker, which is why like if I play D&D, I like playing barbarian characters that have a rage feature where they can get really angry, and when they get angry, they take less damage because they can't feel it and things like that. Like I've always been fascinated by the idea of the berserker.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. and that comes from being a metal fan as well. It all goes hand in hand. It's one of those downward spirals that's just I've been following since age 10.
But at the same time, I get it. I think it's just the difference in taste as well, because that's the archetype that doesn't normally work for me. But I do have other D&D archetypes that do like appeal more. Yeah, and I think it's just going to be one of those. I'll definitely give it a try, but I think this is going to be mostly on you to talk about Conan.
Yeah. But no, this is my thing. And I like my sword and sorcery stuff anyway. I mean, when sword and sorcery films are bad, they're funny.
Yeah.
And when they're good, they're actually really enjoyable. Yeah, so... And also, I mean, there's the other side of it, because this is like the very kind of like action hero side of it. But then there's other sword and sorcery films as well, like Lord of the Rings is sword and sorcery. It's high fantasy sword and sorcery. I guess. Could call it sword and sorcery, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the few sort of
I think
things that bled into the mainstream that really worked for like a different range of audiences.
Yeah,
and I certainly worked for me.
Yeah,
so.
I think people differentiate it by saying that it's high fantasy. It's not sword and sorcery in the sense that it's hair metal sword and sorcery, which is what we usually like. The hair metal aesthetic of, you know, like metal album covers, like polished bronze muscles and swords and bikinis and things, which is what we usually associate with that kind of thing. Whereas that's how people differentiate between high fantasy and sword and sorcery. But I think you could say, because it's got swords and it's got sorcery, so why can't you say it's sword and sorcery? It's just two different ends of the same scale, I think, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the other Conan title as well, because it's, you know, it's like my dose of that metal aesthetic. I quite like it. So yeah, bring me more. Bring me more. So I slam my goblet on the table. Definitely. And that brings us to the end of the comics. I should read you a full list of credits for Savage Sword of Conan. So for this one, we have writing by Jerry Duggan. Ron Garney is the interior artist. Richard Isanov is the colorist. VC's Travis Lanham is the letterer, and Alex Ross is the cover artist. We've got other covers by Kevin Eastman, which I'm a little bit annoyed that I didn't manage to get the Eastman one. Kevin Eastman being the TMNT guy, and he did this like amazing cover for this, which was all like black and white. Well, it wasn't black and white; it was coloured in the end. But it was, I seen the black and white version of it, and it was all like black lines and, you know, crumbling bits of detritus, and it just looks cool when he draws this stuff. When it's Conan smashing skeletons again, like everyone, it's Kevin Eastman, Tommy Varga, Ron Garney, and. We got Tommy Varga did a cover. Kevin Eastman and Tommy Varga. Sorry, Tommy Varga probably coloured it. Eastman did the lines. Ron Garney and Richard Isanov did a cover, and George Perez and Jason Keith. And Raza did a cover. So yeah, I'm, you know, I am stoked by this, and I love me some Conan. So there we go, some sword and sorcery. And I guess we should get onto the pull list. So we can talk about what we're looking forward to over the next couple of weeks. So I'll open with February the 20th, which brings us two new books that I've kind of picked out. One of them has a Netflix counterpart, believe it or not.
Oh.
So we've got this thing called Sharky the Bounty Hunter. And if I read you what I found about Sharky the Bounty Hunter, it's a Millarworld thing, and it's like Mark Millar and Netflix have been doing these collabs. So this is something that's going to be, I think it's going to be on Netflix, and also it's this comic. So you'll see instantly why this appealed to me in a minute. Set in a brilliant new sci-fi universe, Sharky is a blue-collar bounty hunter who tracks criminals across the galaxy in his converted rocket-powered ice cream truck. Aided and abetted by his 10-year-old partner, he's out for the biggest bounty of his career. And it's Netflix's latest live-action project from Mark Millar as well, and it says read the comic before you see the movie. So, yeah, it's going to be a Netflix thing.
Okay.
And there are other ones that are collaborations between Mark Millar and Netflix as well at the moment. I forget entirely what they all are. The Magic Order, and he did a thing called Prodigy as well. So the Magic Order and Prodigy are both Millarworld Netflix things and comics at the same time, which is kind of cool. The next one that I had on my list was called High Level, which is a Vertigo book. Hundreds of years after the world ended and human society was rebuilt from scratch, a self-interested smuggler is forced to traverse a new continent of danger and mystery to deliver a child messiah to High Level. a mythical city at the top of the world from which no one has ever returned. Don't miss the start of a new series from writer Rob Sheridan, co-creator of Nine Inch Nails' groundbreaking Year Zero alternate reality game. So, writer is Rob Sheridan, letterer Romulo Ferrario Jr. Francesco Mattina is a variant cover artist on here. The actual artist for the book is Barnaby Bagenda, and Guillaume Hospital is a cover artist. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. And that's my Feb 20th. Ray, what we got for you for Feb 20th?
I've only got one, and it's might be a surprising pick. Hulk Varine's number one.
I'm laughing because I read I read this. I read about this, and I know where this is coming from. This is like that Weapon H shit, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm giving it credence is because it's written by Greg Pak, and he's got a history of writing good Hulk comics. I like him from Mechadet U. I like that he wrote John Wick, so I'm giving it the time of day. But like the blurb is really interesting, and the cover is really funny because it's Weapon H versus his predecessors, Wolverine and the Hulk. Once the Weapon X program sought to recreate the world's two greatest hunters, they ended up with Weapon H, a man of adamantium claws and gamma juice blood. Now Wolverine and the Hulk are back in action and coming after the dangerous creation made in their name. And it's just like Weapon H hulking out in the corner, and then like Hulk, and then Wolverine about to like fly into him. It looks hilarious. I can't wait to just see if it's funny. I'll read it like while I'm at the comic book shop and then not pay for it possibly.
Whoa, can't say that on here.
Well, everybody does it. It's fine. I'll buy something else to make up for it, but I want to at least check it out. So it's Hulk Varine's number one.
Yeah.
Greg Pak writing, Ario Anindito artist.
Yeah, I kind of want to read that. I read about it and it just sounds insane. And I read about the Weapon H stuff when that started first doing the rounds, and it's like the Hulk with adamantium claws, and I'm like, is it 1995?
Yeah.
You know.
I had no idea that was a thing until I saw the preview for this comic.
Yeah,
so,
it's just it just like instantly I was thinking about like, I don't know, the first thing that came into my head was the Amalgam Comics, the notorious Amalgam Comics, which was the combination of DC and Marvel heroes. And we had like these Batman, Wolverine crossed together into one character, and you had the Joker and Sabretooth crossed together into one character, and I think it was Captain America and Superman became one character.
That sounds awful.
Oh my god, it's a hole we're going to have to go down, Ray.
Okay,
it is for this show, because I want to hear what you guys think about these things. But yeah, Amalgam Comics, Leon, you've been signed up for that in your stead. So when you listen to this, your name is already down for it. I can't rub that out. It's it's indelible. But yeah, it's the first thing that came into my head when I first started hearing about Weapon H was Amalgam Comics. It just screamed that, the idea of it. But I mean, I guess I when I'm laughing at it, and when I'm not saying that it's terrible. I'm just so ridiculous, the idea of it, for me. I don't know why that's more ridiculous than a short man with metal bones and claws and a big guy who's green. But you know,
put them together.
yeah,
more ridiculous.
Put them together. That's a no. You know. But yeah. So yeah, that's your only one for Feb 20th, is it?
Yeah. So how about your Feb 27th?
Feb 27th, we've got Detective Comics 999. So we're one away from 1,000.
Yeah, talk to me in a month, Greg, and then we can, and then we'll shout about it. 999. I ain't got time for 999.
Ice Cream Man number 10.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, on Feb 27th. Did you get the? Did you get Hopscotch Melange Part 1 number 9?
No, I'm not caught up, but I will.
It is a trip.
Okay.
So
cool. Yeah, I'll get that after this.
Yeah. So Ice Cream Man number 10, Hopscotch Melange Part 2.
Oh, okay.
And it's in Spanish.
The entire book?
No, this. The blurb is in Spanish. En este capítulo no existen las fronteras. El mundo está lleno de amor, pero el amor es peligroso. I don't know how good that sounds, but I tried. I'm sorry if I've completely butchered that. But yeah, it's in Spanish, and according to this as well, Universal Cable Productions is adapting Ice Cream Man for a TV series.
Oh wow, okay.
And Max and Adam Reed will write the adaptation, and there'll be executive producers alongside Chris Bender, Jake Weiner, and Jake Wagner of Good Fear Films.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
It'll be shot to premium cable and streaming services. And so I will have to translate that Spanish.
Well, let me give it a go. So, in this chapter, non-existent. There's no there's no borders. El mundo is the world. Mundo está lleno del amor. Love. The world is full of love, but love is dangerous.
Ah, okay.
I totally just got that from Google Translate. Sorry. But it was convincing, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that is Ice Cream Man number 10. And our awful language skills. So there we go. And that wraps up the poll list.
Well, I've got some for the 27th.
You got some for the 27th as well, yes.
I'll run through them very quickly. Yeah. John Wick number 5, if in fact that's actually accurate, because I've been burned waiting for number 4, which didn't come out on every single month when I thought it was going to come out. But yeah, hopefully John Wick number 5 is out on Feb 27th. There's Buffy the Vampire Slayer number 2, which we talked about, issue number 1. Mm-hmm. I possibly won't read this myself. I'm going to wait for you and Leon to read it, but just letting you know that it's coming out.
Yep.
Captain Marvel, Braver and Mightier, number 1, in time for the movie. Life is Strange, number 4. And The Avant Guards, number 2.
Yes. All of those things.
All of those things.
Yes, they all sound good. Just to mention, when you mentioned John Wick, you reminded me that I saw a picture of Keanu Reeves earlier today holding a John Wick action figure.
Oh, that's very cool. Imagine having your own action figure.
It's just Keanu Reeves looking seriously at the camera with like Matrix posters and stuff in the background. He's holding a John Wick action figure into the camera. And it's just like Keanu overload. But yeah.
Keanu's the best. I love him.
He is good. And it's probably time that I come out and mention one of my favourite films is Point Break, but there we go.
No shame in that. It's a great film.
If you talk to the right people, there's shame in it, apparently. But yeah.
Talk to the wrong people, there's shame in it. Talk to the right people and we'll be high-fiving you.
Yeah. Point Break's great. But that'll wrap us up for Ace Comicals episode number 56. You can find us at www.acecomicals.com. You can find us on Twitter under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Instagram at Ace Comicals. You can find us pretty much everywhere, really. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn and Castro to listen to us. Send us your questions. We want your silly scenarios to debate, so send those to acecomicals@gmail.com. Also, DM them us on the Twitter. Get involved with the conversation if you hear something that we're talking about that you've read and you want to have your say. Just tweet at us and just tell us what you thought, because we want to hear your thoughts as well. Ray, where can we find you?
Yeah, on Twitter at Monkeh, so that's at MOONKEH.
And you can find me on Twitter under @Batto, that's BATTOU. And that has been Ace Comicals number 56. That's Ace Comicals, over and out.